Kangday wiped the sweat from his forehead as he climbed out of the mining shaft. The crystal dust made everything shine with an unnatural blue light on Kepler 442b. He had been working in these mines for 3 years now, side by side with the native Velthari people. Their tall, pale bodies moved gracefully through the tunnels, and their large silver eyes could see in the dark better than any human. "Another good day," said Kim Jun, his mining partner. Jun was shorter than Day, but twice as strong. They had worked together since the first day Day arrived on this planet. "Yes, but I need to get to the council meeting," Day replied. "Nari asked me to come today. Park Nari was special on this world. She was half human and half Velthari. Her mother had been human, and her father was Velthari. This made her different from everyone else. She could speak both languages perfectly and helped humans and Velthari understand each other. Her skin was pale like the Velthari, but she had brown human eyes instead of silver ones." Day walked to the great crystal halls beneath the ground. The Velthari had built these halls thousands of years ago. The walls were made of living crystal that glowed with soft light. As he entered, he saw hundreds of people sitting in circles. Humans sat on one side and Velthari sat on the other. In the center of the hall, the Elder Council sat on tall crystal chairs. These elders were very old Velthari who made all the important decisions. Their leader was Elder Vextar, who was said to be over 500 years old. His silver eyes seemed to look right through people. Dai found a seat and looked around for Nari. She usually sat near the front to translate for both sides. But today, she was not in her usual place. Instead, she stood in the center of the hall facing the elders. Her hands were tied behind her back with strange red threads that seemed to move on their own. "What is happening?" Day whispered to a human woman next to him. "They say she broke an old law," the woman whispered back. "Something about her blood being wrong." Elder Vextar stood up slowly. His voice was deep and cold when he spoke. "Park Nari, child of two worlds, you have been found guilty of corrupting the sacred bloodlines." Nari's face was calm, but Dai could see fear in her brown eyes. She tried to speak, but the red threads around her hands began to glow. She made a small sound of pain and could not say any words. "The ancient law is clear," Elder Vextar continued. "Those who mix the blood of two peoples must be purified. You will be taken to the holy moon of Silthara in 3 days. There, you will undergo the purification ritual." Dai felt his heart stop. He had heard whispers about Silthara. People said it was a cursed place. No one who went there for the ritual ever came back. The Velthari said this was because they became pure spirits, but humans had their doubts. "This is wrong." Day stood up before he could stop himself. All eyes turned to him. The crystal hall became very quiet. Elder Vextar's silver eyes focused on Day like laser beams. "Human, you dare speak in the sacred council? Nari has done nothing wrong," Day said. His voice shook a little, but he kept talking. "She has helped our peoples work together for years. She translates, she teaches, she helps solve problems. How is this a crime?" "You do not understand our ways," Elder Vextar said. "The mixing of bloodlines weakens both peoples. It creates confusion and chaos. The old laws exist for good reasons. But she did not choose to be born," Day argued. "How can you punish someone for something they did not choose?" Other humans began to murmur agreement. Some Velthari also looked uncomfortable. Day noticed that many of the younger Velthari seemed sad about what was happening to Nari. Elder Vextar raised his hand for silence. "The law is the law. It has stood for 3,000 years. One human cannot change what has always been." 2. Velthari guards moved toward Nari. They wore dark robes and carried energy weapons. The red threads around Nari's hands grew brighter, and she fell to her knees in pain. "Stop!" Day started to move forward, but Kim Jun grabbed his arm. "You cannot help her by getting yourself killed," Jun whispered. "Think before you act." The guards lifted Nari to her feet. As they led her away, she looked back at Day. For just a moment, their eyes met. In that moment, Day felt something strange. It was like a voice in his head, but not quite. Nari was trying to tell him something, but the red threads were making it hard for her to use her abilities. The purification ritual will take place when the 3 moons align, Elder Vextar announced. Until then, the criminal will be held in the Temple of Echoes. No one may visit her, no one may speak for her, the law has decided. The council meeting ended and people began to leave. Day sat in his chair feeling helpless and angry. He watched as the elders walked away, their robes flowing like water over the crystal floor. "Come on," June said softly. "There is nothing more we can do here today." But Day was not ready to give up. As they walked back to the human settlement, his mind raced with thoughts. There had to be something he could do. Nari was innocent and everyone knew it. She had never hurt anyone. In fact, she had helped prevent many fights between humans and Velthari. That night, Dai could not sleep. He kept thinking about Nari's eyes when the guards took her away. She had looked so brave, even though she was scared. He had seen that same look in the eyes of soldiers he had served with in his military days. It was the look of someone who would not give up, even when things seemed hopeless. Day made a decision. He would find a way to save Nari, even if it meant going against the most powerful beings on this planet. The elders thought they could hide behind old laws and ancient traditions, but Day had learned something during his years in the military. Sometimes the right thing to do was also the hardest thing to do. He would need help and he would need to be very careful. But Park Nari would not die on that cursed moon if he had anything to say about it. The next morning, Kang Day went straight to the human settlement's main building. He needed to talk to Choi Hana, their leader. She had been dealing with the Velthari government for 10 years and knew their laws better than anyone. Choi Hana was a small woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. She sat behind a metal desk covered with papers and data tablets. When Day walked in, she looked up and sighed. "I know why you are here," she said. "It is about Park Nari. We have to do something," Day said. "We cannot just let them kill her." "Kill her?" Hana shook her head. "The Velthari do not see it that way. They believe the ritual will purify her spirit and make her one with their ancestors." "Have you ever seen anyone come back from Silthara?" Day asked. Hana was quiet for a long moment. "No," she finally said. "In the past 10 years, 3 other mixed-blood people have been sent there. None returned." "Then it is murder." "Maybe," Hana said. "But our treaty with the Velthari is very clear. We cannot interfere in their religious practices. If we try to stop this ritual, they could kick all humans off this planet. Thousands of people would lose their homes and jobs." Day felt anger rising in his chest. "So we sacrifice one person to save thousands? That is how politics works," Hana said sadly. "I do not like it, but I have to think about everyone." Day left the meeting feeling more frustrated than before. He walked to the mining area, where he found Kim Jun and his younger brother Lee Tae. Lee was only 22 and worked as an engineer. He was very smart and spent most of his time reading and studying. "Any luck with the settlement leader?" Jun asked. "No help there," Day said. "She is too worried about the treaty. Maybe we need to think differently," Lee Tae said. He was looking at a data tablet. "I have been reading about Velthari law since yesterday. There are thousands of rules and traditions going back centuries." "And?" Day asked. "Well, most of the Bao laws are about blood purity and keeping the different clans separate. But there are some strange old rules that nobody talks about anymore." "What kind of rules?" Lee Tae scrolled through his tablet. "There is something called the right of claiming. It is very old, maybe 2,000 years. It says that one person can take responsibility for another person's fate." "What does that mean?" Jun asked. "I am not sure," Lee said. "The translation is not very clear, but it seems like if someone claims another person, they become connected by law. Whatever happens to one happens to both." Day thought about this. Who would know more about these old laws? Bei Jun might know, Lee suggested. He used to be a diplomat before he became the colony archivist. He has studied Velthari culture for years. They found Bei Jun in the archives, a quiet building, filled with books and data files. Jun was an older man with kind eyes and a gentle voice. He listened carefully as Day explained what had happened to Nari. The right of claiming, Jun said slowly. I have read about it, but I thought it was just a historical curiosity. No one has used it in centuries. But it is still a real law? Day asked. Yes, as far as I know. The Velthari take their old laws very seriously. Even the ones they do not use anymore are still considered valid. How does it work? Jun went to his computer and searched through files. According to what I have here, a person can claim responsibility for another person's fate by declaring it in front of the Elder Council. But there is a catch. What catch? The person making the claim has to prove they are worthy through trials. If they fail the trials, both people face the same punishment. Day felt his heart racing. This could be the answer. What kind of trials? It does not say exactly. The trials are chosen by the elders based on the situation. They test different things like strength, wisdom, and spiritual connection. And if someone passes the trials, then they become legally bound to the person. They claimed. It is like a very serious form of protection. The claimed person becomes part of the claimant's family in the eyes of the law. That evening, Day could not stop thinking about what he had learned. The right of claiming might be Nari's only chance, but it was incredibly dangerous. If he failed the trials, both he and Nari would be sent to Silthara together. As he was eating dinner alone in his small apartment, something strange happened. He felt a tingling sensation in his head, like someone was trying to talk to him from far away. The feeling was very weak, but it seemed familiar. Suddenly, images flashed in his mind. He saw a dark room with crystal walls. Nari was there, sitting on the floor with the red thread still around her hands. She looked tired and scared, but she was trying to send him a message. The images were unclear, but Day got the feeling that Nari was trying to warn him about something. She showed him pictures of the moon Silthara, but it did not look like a holy place. Instead, it looked dark and evil. There were strange shapes moving in the shadows, things that did not look like Velthari or humans. Then the connection broke, and Day was alone in his apartment again. His head hurt, and he felt dizzy. But now he was more sure than ever that the purification ritual was not what the elders claimed it was. The next day, Day went back to see Bei-jun. He also brought Yoon Mira, a scientist who studied alien biology. Mira was very smart and had spent years learning about Velthari culture and biology. I need to know everything about the right of claiming, Day told them. Every detail, every rule, every possible problem. Are you serious about this? Mira asked. You could die. Nari is already going to die, Day replied. At least this way she has a chance. Jun and Mira spent hours going through old files and books. They found more details about the claiming process and the trials. The more Day learned, the more dangerous it sounded. The trials are not just tests, Mira explained. They are designed to break people. The Velthari believe that only someone with perfect dedication can claim another person's fate. What happens if I succeed? Day asked. Then you and Nari become bound by their law, Jun said. She would be under your protection, but you would also be responsible for her actions for the rest of your lives. And the elders cannot refuse the claim? Not if you follow the proper procedures. The right of claiming is one of their oldest laws. To refuse it would undermine their entire legal system. That night, Day made his final decision. Tomorrow was the last day before Nari would be taken to Silthara. He would invoke the right of claiming and demand the trials. It was risky, but it was the only chance they had. As he prepared for what might be his last night of freedom, Day thought about why he was doing this. Nari was a friend, but she was more than that. She represented something important, the idea that people should not be punished for things they could not control. If he let the elders kill her, what would that say about humans? What would that say about him? No. He had made his choice. Tomorrow he would stand before the Elder Council and claim Park Nari as his own. Whatever happened after that, at least he would know he had tried to do the right thing. The morning of the third day came too quickly. Kang Day had barely slept, but his mind was clear. He dressed in his best clothes and walked to the crystal halls where the Elder Council was preparing for the transport ritual. The great hall was filled with Velthari in ceremonial robes. They chanted in their ancient language while burning sweet-smelling incense. At the center of it all, Park Nari knelt on a raised platform. The red threads around her hands had grown thicker and brighter. Her face was pale, and she looked very weak. Elder Vextar stood beside her, holding a crystal staff that glowed with inner light. "Today we cleanse the corruption from our world," he announced to the gathered crowd. "The impure blood will be purified in the sacred fires of Silthara." "Wait!" Day's voice rang out across the hall. He walked forward through the crowd, ignoring the shocked gasps and angry mutters from the Velthari. "I have something to say." Elder Vexitar's silver eyes narrowed. "Human, this is a sacred ceremony. You have no place here." "I have every right to be here," Day said firmly. He had practiced these words many times. "I invoke the ancient right of claiming according to the old laws of your people." The hall became completely silent. Even the chanting stopped. Elder Vextar looked genuinely surprised for the first time since Dee had known him. "The right of claiming," Vextar repeated slowly. "That law has not been used for over 2 centuries. But it is still valid," Day said. "Your own legal codes confirm this. I claim responsibility for Park Nari's fate. I bind myself to her destiny according to the ancient ways." Murmurs spread through the crowd. Some Velthari looked confused, others looked angry. But Day noticed that some of the younger ones looked hopeful. "You do not understand what you are asking," Elder Vextar said. "The right of claiming is not a simple thing. It requires trials that would break a human mind and body." "I understand perfectly," Day replied. "I have studied your laws. If I pass the trials, Park Nari comes under my protection. The ritual cannot proceed. And if you fail, then we both go to Silthara together." Elder Vexitar was quiet for a long moment. Day could see him thinking, trying to find a way out of this situation. But the other elders were watching, and many Velthari in the crowd knew about the old laws too. Finally, Vextar spoke. "Very well. The right of claiming is invoked. But know this, human. The trials will test everything you are. Your body, your mind, and your spirit will be pushed beyond all limits. I accept." "Then let it be recorded," Vextar announced to the hall. "Kang Day of the human settlement has claimed Park Nari under the ancient rite. The trials will begin at sunset. If he succeeds, the ritual is cancelled. If he fails, both will be sent to Silthara for purification." The crowd began to disperse, but many people stayed to watch Dai. Some looked at him with respect, others with pity. He did not care about their opinions. He only cared about Nari, who was looking at him with tears in her brown eyes. As the guards prepared to take Nari back to her prison, she managed to mouth 2 words: "Thank you." Day spent the rest of the day preparing for the trials. Kim Jun and Lee Tae helped him as much as they could. They brought him food and water, and they found Nam Ki, an old combat instructor who had trained human security forces. "The first trial will test your physical strength," Nam Ki explained. "The Velthari believe that a weak body means a weak spirit. You will need to be ready for anything." "What about the other trials?" Dai asked. "The second trial tests mental discipline," Bai, Jun said. He had come to help with advice. "The Velthari have powerful psychic abilities. They will try to break your mind with fear and doubt." "And the third trial?" "Spiritual connection," said Yunmira. "That is the hardest one to explain. The Velthari believe that all living things are connected through the planet itself. You will have to prove that you understand this connection." As the sun began to set, Day made his way back to the crystal halls. A large crowd had gathered, including many humans from the settlement. Even Choihana was there, though she looked worried about what this might mean for the treaty. The first trial took place in the crystal caves beneath the city. Elder Vextar led Day down winding passages that went deep into the planet's crust. The walls were covered with living crystal that pulsed with different colors. This is the crucible of strength, Vextar explained. You must survive in these caves for one full day and night, but you will not be alone. What do you mean? The caves are home to the Velketh, hunting beasts that our ancestors used to test warriors. They can sense fear and weakness. If you show either, they will kill you. Vextar left Day alone in a large cavern with multiple tunnels leading in different directions. The only light came from the glowing crystals, and the air was thick with strange mist. Day heard the first growl within minutes of being left alone. It was a low, rumbling sound that seemed to come from everywhere at once. He drew the knife they had allowed him to carry and pressed his back against the wall. The Velketh that emerged from the shadows was unlike anything Day had ever seen. It was about the size of a large dog, but its body was covered in crystal-like scales that reflected the cave light. Its eyes were bright red, and its teeth were as sharp as razors. The beast circled Day slowly, testing him. Day remembered his military training and stayed calm. He did not run or show fear, even though his heart was pounding. The Velketh seemed confused by his stillness. Then more growls echoed through the cave. There was more than one beast. For the next several hours, Day played a deadly game of cat and mouse with the Velketh pack. He used his knowledge of mining to navigate the cave system, finding narrow passages where the beasts could not follow easily. When he had to fight, he used quick, precise strikes, trying to wound rather than kill. The turning point came near midnight. Day was resting in a small alcove when he heard a different sound. Not a growl, but a cry of pain. Following the sound, he found a young Velthari hunter who had fallen into a thermal vent during his own trial. The hunter's leg was badly burned and Velketh were closing in on him. Day could have stayed hidden and let the beast take the hunter. It would have been easier and safer, but that was not who he was. He jumped down into the thermal area and fought off the Velketh pack, dragging the injured hunter to safety. Why? The young Velthari asked in broken human language. I am not part of your trial, because it was the right thing to do, Day replied simply. When dawn came and Elder Vextar returned to collect Day, he found both the human and the rescued hunter waiting calmly in the main cavern. The Velketh were nowhere to be seen, but Day had several new scars and his clothes were torn. The first trial is complete, Vextar announced. You have shown strength not just in body, but in spirit. As they walked back to the surface, Day noticed something different in the elder's voice. There was a hint of respect that had not been there before. 2 more trials remain, Vextar said. Each will be harder than the last. Day nodded. He was tired and hurt, but he was not defeated. He had survived the first test and he would survive the others too. Nari was counting on him, and he would not let her down. The crowd that greeted them at the surface was larger than before. Word had spread about the human who was challenging the ancient ways. Some Velthari looked impressed, others looked angry. But all of them were paying attention. That was exactly what Day wanted. The second trial began the next evening. Kang Day had spent the day resting and treating his wounds from the cave beasts. His friends brought him food and water, but he could see the worry in their eyes. 2 trials still remained, and everyone knew they would be even more dangerous. Oh Seo, Kim Jun's sister, came to see him before the trial. She worked as a communications specialist and was very smart about technology and alien cultures. I have been talking to some of the younger Velthari, she said quietly. They are starting to question the elders. Many of them like Nari and think this whole ritual is wrong. That is good, Day replied. But I still have to pass the trials. The second trial is about the mind, Seo explained. The Velthari will try to break you mentally. They will use their psychic powers to make you see your worst fears and memories. Any advice? Remember who you are and why you are doing this. Hold on to the truth, no matter what they show you. As darkness fell, Elder Vexistar led Day to a different part of the crystal halls. This area was older and darker than the rest. The crystal walls were black instead of blue, and they seemed to absorb light rather than create it. This is the maze of echoing thoughts, Vextar explained. It was built by our ancestors to test the minds of future leaders. Many who enter this maze never find their way out. What exactly will happen? You must reach the center of the maze while our telepaths assault your mind with visions of fear and doubt. If you give in to the fear, you will become lost forever in the maze. Vextar opened a heavy crystal door. Beyond it was a corridor that seemed to stretch into infinity. The walls were covered with strange symbols that hurt to look at directly. You have until dawn, Vextar said. If you have not reached the center by then, you will be considered lost. Day stepped into the maze and the door closed behind him with a sound like thunder. Immediately he felt pressure in his head, as if someone was trying to push into his thoughts. The first vision hit him after only a few steps. Suddenly, he was back on his home planet, watching his parents die in the mining accident that had made him an orphan. The images were so real that he could smell the smoke and hear the screams, but Day forced himself to remember that it was not real. It was just a memory, and memories could not hurt him now. He kept walking forward, choosing corridors that felt right to him. The second vision was worse. He saw himself failing the trials and being sent to Silthara with Nari. He watched as strange creatures in the shadows tore them both apart while they screamed for help that would never come. This vision was harder to fight because it felt like it could really happen. Day felt fear creeping into his heart, but he pushed it away. He thought about Nari's brave face when the guards had taken her away. She had not given up, and neither would he. As he went deeper into the maze, the visions became more personal and painful. The Velthari telepaths seemed to know exactly which memories would hurt him most. They showed him every failure, every mistake, every moment of shame from his entire life. But somewhere along the way, Day realized something important. The visions were meant to make him feel alone and worthless. But he was not alone. Even here, in this dark maze, he carried the love and support of his friends with him. He thought about Kim Jun's loyalty, Lee Tae's intelligence, and all the people who had helped him prepare for these trials. More importantly, he thought about Nari. She was not just someone he was trying to save. She was a bridge between two peoples, a symbol of what they could become if they worked together instead of apart. The elders wanted to destroy that bridge, but Day would not let them. With this realization, the visions began to lose their power over him. When the telepath showed him failure, he saw opportunity. When they showed him death, he saw the chance to live with honor. When they showed him loneliness, he saw the connections he had made with people from two different worlds. The maze began to change around him. The dark corridors became lighter, and the painful symbols on the walls turned into beautiful patterns. He was getting close to the center. The final corridor was the hardest. Here, the Velthari telepaths tried one last attack. They showed him a vision of success, but a success that required him to abandon his human nature and become like them. In this vision, he passed the trials and saved Nari, but only by giving up everything that made him human. "This is what we offer you," whispered voices in his head. "Join us completely, become one of us. Forget your human weakness and embrace our strength." For a moment, Day was tempted. It would be so easy to accept their offer and become something more than human. But then he thought about what made humans special. It was not their strength or their intelligence. It was their ability to care about others, even others who were different from them. "No," he said aloud. "I am human, and I am proud to be human. That is exactly why I can do what you cannot do." The voices fell silent, and the final door appeared before him. Beyond it was a round chamber with a crystal fountain in the center. The water in the fountain glowed with pure white light. Elder Vextar was waiting for him there, along with several other elders. They all looked surprised to see him. "The second trial is complete," Vextar announced. "You have shown mental discipline and strength of will." But there was something else in the elder's voice now. It was confusion, and maybe a little fear. Day had done something the elders had not expected. He had passed their trial without becoming like them. "One trial remains," Vextar continued. "The bonding of souls is the most dangerous of all. Many who attempt it are destroyed completely." "What does it involve?" Day asked. "You must link your consciousness with the claimed person while she is still bound by the neural threads. This connection will show you the true nature of the purification ritual. If your mind is too weak to handle the truth, You will both be destroyed. Day felt a chill run down his spine. There was something in Vextar's voice that suggested the elder knew more about this truth than he was saying. When does it begin? Now, Vextar said. The neural threads are at their strongest during the hours before dawn. This is the only time the bonding can be attempted. They led Day to the Temple of Echoes, where Nari was being held. She was sitting in the center of a crystal circle, and the red threads around her hands had grown to cover most of her arms. She looked very weak, but her eyes lit up when she saw Day. You passed the first 2 trials, she whispered. I felt it through the threads. And I will pass this one too, Day promised. The elders placed Day in a second crystal circle across from Nari. They began to chant in their ancient language, and the crystals around both circles started to glow brighter. Remember, Elder Vextar said, once the bonding begins, there is no stopping it. You will share everything, thoughts, memories, fears, and the truth about what awaits on Silthara. Day nodded. He was ready for whatever came next. The chanting reached a crescendo, and suddenly Day felt his mind rush forward into Nari's. The world exploded into light and sound and sensation. He was no longer just Kang Day. He was also Park Nari, feeling everything she felt, knowing everything she knew, and what he learned in that moment of connection changed everything he thought he knew about the purification ritual and the Elder Council. The truth was far worse than he had ever imagined. The moment Kang Day's mind connected with Park Nari's, he saw the horrible truth. The purification ritual was not about cleansing souls or joining with ancestors. It was about feeding ancient creatures that had been living beneath Silthara for thousands of years. Through Nari's memories, Dai saw the real history of the Velthari people. Long ago, their ancestors had discovered parasitic beings deep in the moon's caves. These creatures promised great power in exchange for regular feeding. They needed the life force of beings with mixed blood because it was stronger and more pure than normal Velthari energy. But the worst discovery was yet to come. Many of the current elders were no longer truly Velthari. The parasites had slowly taken over their bodies and minds over the centuries. Elder Vextar and at least half of the Elder Council were now controlled by these ancient creatures. Now you know. Nari's voice whispered in his mind. This is why they want to kill all the mixed-blood children. We can see through their disguise. Our double nature lets us sense what they really are. The mental connection was painful, but Dai held on. He had to learn everything he could. Through Nari's hybrid abilities, he saw the parasites' plan. They were growing stronger with each feeding, and soon they would have enough power to take over all the Velthari. After that, they planned to spread to other worlds, including human colonies. How long have you known? Day asked through their mental link. I started to suspect when I was very young, Nari replied. But the neural threads have been showing me everything clearly. The parasites do not know that I can still see their memories through the connection. Suddenly, the bonding process was complete and their minds separated. But something had changed. Day could still feel Nari's presence in the back of his mind, and he knew she could feel his too. They were truly bonded now, connected in a way that the parasites had not expected. Elder Vextar stepped forward, his silver eyes gleaming with an unnatural light. The third trial is complete, he announced. You have both survived the bonding, but now you know too much. The other elders moved to surround Day and Nari, but as they did, their disguises began to slip. Day could see dark shadows moving beneath their skin, and their eyes no longer looked Velthari. You will both go to Silthara tonight, Vextar continued. The feeding cannot wait any longer. But Day was ready for this. During the bonding, he and Nari had shared more than just memories. They had made a plan. Everyone needs to hear this. Day shouted as loud as he could. The elders are not what they seem. They are controlled by parasites that have been feeding on your people for centuries. His voice echoed through the temple and into the crystal halls beyond. Many Velthari and humans had been waiting outside to hear the results of the trials. Now they heard something very different. The neural threads around Nari's hands suddenly snapped. The bonding had given her new strength, and she was no longer helpless. She stood up and raised her hands, using her hybrid abilities to project the truth directly into the minds of everyone nearby. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Young Velthari, who had always felt something was wrong with the Elder Council, now saw the parasites clearly. Humans who had been confused by Velthari, politics now understood what was really happening. Lies, Elder Vextar screamed, but his voice was changing. The parasite inside him was losing control. Do not listen to the corrupt ones. But it was too late. The crowd outside the temple was growing angry. They had seen the truth in Nari's mental projection, and they knew they had been deceived for generations. Kim Jun and Li Tae burst into the temple with a group of humans and young Velthari. We saw it all through Nari's projection, Jun said. Everyone knows the truth now. The real Velthari elders are imprisoned beneath the city, Nari said. Her voice was stronger than it had been in days. The parasites have been keeping them alive to maintain the illusion. Elder Vexitar's form began to change. The parasite inside him was revealing its true shape, a writhing mass of dark energy with too many eyes and teeth. You cannot stop us, it hissed. We have fed on your people for 3,000 years. We are stronger than you can imagine. Maybe, Day said, pulling out a small device that Li Tae had given him. But you have never faced human explosives before. The device was a mining charge, designed to break through the hardest crystal formations. Day had modified it during his preparation for the trials. He threw it at the temple's main support pillar and grabbed Nari's hand. Everyone out, he yelled. They ran from the temple as the charge exploded. The ancient crystal structure began to collapse, trapping several of the parasite-controlled elders inside. But Day knew this was just the beginning. The real fight was still to come. Over the next several hours, a revolution swept through the Velthari city. Humans and true Velthari fought side by side against the parasite-controlled guards and elders. It was chaos, but it was necessary chaos. Yoon, Mira and Namki had prepared for this moment. They led teams to the deep temples where the parasites had their breeding chambers. Using a combination of human weapons and Velthari energy technology, they began destroying the creature's power sources. The battle was fierce and dangerous. The parasites fought desperately to protect their ancient stronghold. But they had made one crucial mistake. They had underestimated the power of cooperation between species. In the deepest temple, Dai and Nari found the real Elder Vextar imprisoned in a crystal cage. He was old and weak, but his eyes were clear and truly Velthari. You must destroy the heart chamber, he whispered. It is where the original parasites first landed on our world. As long as it exists, they can return. The heart chamber was a massive cavern filled with pulsing organic machinery. At its center was a writhing mass of the original parasite entities, creatures so old and powerful that they barely seemed real. Together, Nari said, taking Day's hand. Their bonded minds worked as one, combining human determination with Velthari, psychic power. They focused all their energy on the chamber's central support systems. The explosion that followed could be felt throughout the city. The heart chamber collapsed, and with it, the power source that had sustained the parasites for millennia. All across the city, the creatures controlling the false elders withered and died. When the fighting was over, a new kind of government was formed. The real Velthari elders, freed from their crystal prisons, worked with human leaders like Choi, Hana to create a council with representatives from both species. Day and Nari's bond became the symbol of this new cooperation. They were no longer two separate people from different worlds, but a united pair who represented what their species could accomplish together. What will you do now? Kim Jun asked Day as they watched the sun rise over the rebuilt city. Day looked at Nari, who smiled back at him. Through their mental connection, he could feel her thoughts and emotions as clearly as his own. We will build something new, Day said. A place where humans and Velthari can work together as equals. No more ancient laws that divide us. No more secrets that hurt us. The first integrated settlement, Nari added, where mixed-blood children like me can grow up safely, and where both species can learn from each other. It would not be easy. There were still many Velthari who believed in the old ways and many humans who did not trust aliens. But change had begun, and it could not be stopped. As the weeks passed, the new settlement grew. Humans and Velthari lived side by side, sharing their knowledge and their cultures. Children of both species played together in the Crystal Gardens, and for the first time in centuries there was real peace on Kepler 442b. Day had learned something important during his trials. The greatest strength was not in conquering others, but in bringing them together. He had claimed Nari not to own her but to protect her freedom, and in doing so, he had helped free an entire world from ancient evil. The story would be told for generations, how a human mining supervisor stood up to powerful elders, passed impossible trials, and helped destroy creatures that had ruled through fear for thousands of years. But the real victory was not in the fighting or the trials. The real victory was in the new world they built together, where love and cooperation were stronger than hatred and tradition.